Joining us now, Democratic Governor Jennifer Granholm of Michigan, Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota. Thank you both for joining us this morning. I want to get right to the big question citizens of your state across the country are asking as they watch this debate, governors in Washington, about spending more than $800 billion. Is it worth it? Is it simply worth it? Will all this money actually create jobs? And I ask because there are widely varying estimates about what it will do. The Congressional Budget Office says maybe it'll create as few as 1.2 million jobs. President Obama, as you know, says no, it will create 4.1 million jobs. I want to start with you, Governor Granholm. Your state has been hit so hard. How many jobs would this package create in the state of Michigan?
Well, Mark Zandi from Moody's says that it would create over 150,000 jobs for us. And believe me, we are all about jobs. Those 140,000 jobs that were lost this past week, we see the impact of this every day. And I'm speaking not just for Michigan, but for governors across the country. We need help. We need it now. And it's not about budgets. It's about creating jobs in our states.
Governor Pawlenty, how many jobs in the state of Minnesota?
Well, just on the construction aspect of it alone, one of our local congressmen said on highways and roads and bridges it would be 12,000 jobs. But, John, one thing to keep in mind, if you take $813 billion, which is the amount the House authorized, and divide that by 4 million jobs, which President-elect Obama or President Obama said is going to save or create, that's about $205,000 a job. So people are also concerned about, is this package focused right? Is it targeted right? Is it the best bang for the buck in terms of how the money's being spent?
Well, as you make that point, Governor, then why not take a principled stand and say, I don't want the money, I think it's wasteful spending?
Well, in Minnesota's case, we have a situation where we pay into the federal government way more than we take out, so we're not going to be bashful about getting our fair share, but we do lend voice to how we think this money could be most effectively spent, and we hope that those voices will be heard as the debate continues.
You governors have to make the tough choices. You don't get to run up a big deficit like they do here in Washington. And I don't know if you can see me or not, but as we continue the discussion, I want to show some front-page newspapers out in your states. The Sunday Free Press says governor to push tuition freeze. A tough choice for you, Governor Granholm, I'm sure, at a time of economic to push for other cuts in government. In the state, we also have, and excuse me, these are a little big, here in the Duluth News-Tribune, you can survive the awful economy. 10 ideas for weathering the storm. These are the tough choices families are facing. Now, I want to ask you another question being asked around the country. Do you think Washington is making the right tough choices? Because in this $800 billion plan, the Senate plan, you have things like this. $400 million to fight HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. $650 million for digital TV converter boxes. $345 million for agriculture department computers. $75 million for anti-smoking campaigns, and $150 million for honeybee farmers. They all may be worthy goals, but Governor Granholm, this is a new Democratic administration and a new Democratic Congress. Can you say with a straight face that this is emergency spending that's necessary immediately to create jobs?
I tell you what's necessary immediately is investment in infrastructure jobs and jobs that we can put people to work in right now. I know that's going to change as it goes through the Senate. I agree that we've got to focus this stimulus package on creating jobs for our people right now and on making sure that people are not hurt in the meantime, meaning that you want to make sure that people who go on unemployment have those benefits. You want to make sure that you're not slashing people off of health care, children, pregnant women, senior citizens, people with disabilities. Those are the things that this package is targeted on. A third toward making sure people are not being hurt, a third toward investing in job creation, and a third toward tax cuts. That, to me, is a good balance.
Well, I want to be clear, Governor. As a Democrat and the governor of a leading industrial state, those proposals I mentioned at the top, you don't think they belong in a bill designated as emergency economic rescue, that if the Democrats want to pass those things, why not put them in a separate bill and stand up and say, we think these are the things George W. Bush ignored for 8 years. We think they're important, but we're going to be honest and say this is spending. This is spending we think is necessary. This other bill, stimulus, we think will create jobs. Why not do it that way?
Let me be very clear. I want to see every dollar put into job creation. If things are in there that are not related to job creation, it should perhaps be in other bills. But this bill should be related to job creation and helping people get through this economic crisis.
Governor Pawlenty, do you have any confidence that Washington will make the tough choices and make the distinctions your Democratic colleague says she believes are necessary? But do you think in Washington, a town now with a new Democratic president and Democratic majorities in both the House and the Senate, will they make those choices?
Let me say first, John, it appears that the country obviously is in crisis. We're going to need to do some things to get this economy going. In terms of making tough choices, if you look at the federal government, They're going deeper and deeper into debt. They don't appear at all interested in the past or now to be worried about balancing the budget in the context of this crisis. They say, well, we'll pay for it down the road, kicking the can down the road. That hasn't worked, either whether you have a Republican or a Democratic Congress. So they just continue to do everything without regard to focus, without regard to prioritization, without regard to balancing the budget. I hope when the Senate gets their bill, they will weed out some of those things that you've just described and focus on those things that will be more directly and more quickly related to creating jobs. That would be the tax cuts, that would be the infrastructure, and some other things. In the House bill, it appears that those got diminished.
Let me ask you before we need to get to a break, we'll have more of our discussion, but Governor Pawlenty, your state sadly became in some ways a poster child for the need for infrastructure back in 2007 when you had this very sad and tragic bridge collapse. There will be infrastructure money in this legislation. I want to ask you in the sense of what you have on the shelf. First Governor Pawlenty, then Governor Granholm. How fast can you spend that money? How quickly will it create good construction and manufacturing jobs?
And with respect to the 35W bridge, of course, the National Transportation Safety Board said that fell because of a design flaw from the 1960s, just so we have that clear. But beyond that, there are a number of projects that can be done relatively quickly. But even if you move with dispatch, it's not like you can turn on the switch overnight. There's going to take some lag time to get those projects on running. And if you look at the House bill, there's been estimates that as much as a half or more of the bill really won't even kick in, not just on the infrastructure side, but more broadly, really won't even kick in for more than a year from now.
But Governor Granholm, when Governor Pawlenty talks about the delays in kicking it in, give some advice to the President and to everybody here in Washington about leaving it so that you can spend that money immediately, no strings, and the money fast into the system.
We can spend this money immediately. We have about $900 million in the budget bill that was passed by the House. That would go to infrastructure in Michigan, $900 million. However, I have $20 billion worth of requests for shovel-ready projects that could have dirt flying within 180 days. Now, will it happen overnight? No, because us in the north, the ground's still frozen. But it certainly would happen within 180 days. People could be put to work, and these are projects that will help have long-term impact on the nation's economy by having a good infrastructure.
Governors, please stay with us. More of our discussion just ahead.